Hello, everybody. It is 4:08 p.m. Central Time on the 23rd of July, 2021. It's Friday here in the United States. Got some breaking news for everybody. You can see it here on the screen rolling by right now. 6.6 to 6.8 earthquake, possibly as high as 7, possibly as low as 6.5. We have a significant sized earthquake that just struck in the Philippines. This is the second large earthquake, almost the exact same size as what struck on the opposite side of the Pacific a few days ago. So we had a significant 7.0 earthquake over here in the East Pacific, and that's Central America, 6.7 from USGS. Originally 7, ticking down and down and down to a 6.8, and then to a 6.7. Well, look, we're on the exact opposite side of the plate, over here in the middle north part of Philippines, and that's where our new same-sized earthquake just took place. And this is somewhat of a normal occurrence to see a back and forth on both sides of the Pacific as the plate starts to shift, following a series of deep earthquakes, which we've seen over the past several days and over the past few weeks start to increase with the solar activity. So a new significant size quake. I don't think there would be a tsunami warning issued with this. Again, the size of the quake in that upper 6 to low 7 range usually is not enough to cause major uplift and cause major wave activity. However, there can be underwater landslides that can cause localized tsunamis out to a few hundred miles around the earthquake itself. That being said, let's go over to the USGS. And let's also go over to the tsunami.gov. Just hit my microphone there. Sorry about that. Tsunami.gov. And you guys should probably bookmark tsunami.gov. So they don't have any warning, advisory, watch, or threat issued. They do have the earthquake listed over here. You can click on it. It'll give you some info statements, and the like. And the info statements will basically be, watch out for localized tsunamis for the first couple hours after the earthquake, just in case there's an underwater landslide that sends out a wave. Okay, that being said, let's go over to the National Data Buoy Center, NOAA. There we go. And this is going to show us the buoys in the area. Are there any buoys in event mode? There are no buoys over here in event mode. That's good. And we do have a buoy somewhat close to the actual earthquake epicenter. So here's Philippines, and there's the buoy. So that's good news. Now, I do see a buoy off the east coast of the United States that's in motion. Entirely different story there, and we're not going to be talking about that right now. I'll have to go look into that. But so we get a 6.7. Well, that's the exact same size as the earthquake on the opposite side of the plate. Now, they did the downgrades after that. So downgrades on this one to get it to be a 6.7. This one just coming in at about 6.7. We'll see if they take it up or down. But again, it's two of the same size quakes on two opposite sides of the plate. This is the third 6 for the last 3 days. So in the last 3 days, we have 3 different 6s, and they're really going to near 7. So we really could call these 2 near 7s and a 6. And then the 5s are also starting to increase, going up even to the Arctic Circle. This is north of Greenland, next to Svalbard up at the North Pole. So we're really starting to get a fair amount of movement that's taking place, and that's after the minor G1 solar storm that the mainstream media blew up into some kind of disastrous end of the world scenario. Well, okay, it's not a disaster end of the world, but it certainly is a seismic increase. So a subsequent 6.0 aftershock has just now been reported in here, and that's probably going to be taking place for a little while, as the energy is going to eventually escape out and flow away from this location, go up into Japan, and escape out and go away, since it's on the west side of the Philippines, and go over into China. We don't have an arrow there. This is a very rare occurrence to get it on the western side of Philippines. Normally, we're over here on the eastern side of the Philippines. Let's go back to the USGS map really quick so I can show you what I'm talking about here. So here is the earthquake reported from the USGS. You see where it is. It's right here on the west side of the Philippines. Well, you also see what's there. Plate boundary that goes up to the back side of Taiwan, or the western side of Taiwan. Most of our activity normally happens over here at the wedge-shaped bend in the plate. However, we do see from time to time this portion light up with activity, and when that happens, activity tends to go over to the west, or pressure tends to hand off over to the west and go into China. But it goes in via a way we don't normally expect, which is just south of China, and we come in, I guess that's Thailand, Laos. So I don't have an arrow there. It only happens maybe once every few years do we see this portion of the plate boundary light up. Now, why does that happen? Well, that gets into the deep earthquakes and the pressure that comes in on the underside of the plate. We go back down to here, and we go over into Indonesia, and we're pretty much stopping right here. And there was a volcano that hasn't erupted in 5 years, which started to erupt just a few days ago right here next to East Timor. Sirung, Mount Sirung, Sirunge. So take that into account. Mount Sirung is erupting to the south. We have a previous 6 at the start of the week down here in Indonesia. We have several other 6s that have struck in the past few days, and deep earthquakes, letting us know something's hammering in on the underside of the plate. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about with this hammering action, what I think's happening is very low frequency, electrically induced from the core, is hammering in. First of all, it's focusing in on an underside portion of the plate. When that happens, the wave focuses in on itself, this standing wave, but it can't compress. So it shoots up into the underside of the plate. The combined force of the entire wave focusing in on a small point. Now, I think this is happening down in the asthenosphere, which is the area below the plates. So when we get deep quakes, it's several hundred, if not several thousand miles of energy focusing in on a very small point on the underside of the plate, which then hammers in, and then up, out, and away, we see earthquakes spread that are shallower and larger. Now, they just downgraded that aftershock to a 5.8. You know, a lot of people are paying attention now, and I think that we're going to start to see maybe some scientific debates break out amongst professionals in regards to what's going on with the seismic data. I think that there's some interest now being taken by people who are outside of the online world, and that's going to be a little bit interesting to see. So, let's recap. A significant sized earthquake has struck over here in the West Pacific. Let me show you on the USGS map overall where these have happened. So the red dots are where the big earthquake just struck. And just a day ago, over here, 6.7 earthquake right here at Panama. Now, wouldn't you say those two are almost parallel to each other? I mean, they're off by a little bit latitude, but not much. As a matter of fact, we could even go compare. Let's get the latitude on this. So, 13.69 latitude. That's 13 north. And let's get the one from yesterday. Again, another 6.7 struck over here in the East Pacific. We'll wait for the info to refresh. There it is. So, 13 point whatever. And this one's at 7. So, they're within 7 points latitude of each other. They're pretty much equal if you would want to incorporate in the curvature of the Earth and the tilt of the Earth. So if the tilt of the Earth, whichever way it would be, again, that would account. We were talking about almost the exact same latitude on both sides of the plate within a day of each other, both at 6.7. Now, in the middle here, right here, wouldn't you call this the middle between this 6.7 and this 6.7 would be somewhere right in here if you go around the curvature of the Earth? Well, that's where all our deep earthquakes came hammering in over the past several days. That's why our letter D is there. Letter D stands for deep earthquakes. It's a forecast point for the last 8-9 years that the letter D has been on there. So now we're looking at the 4.9s and greater. Well, 4.8. Let's take it up a notch. There we go. 4.9 and greater. And that really shows it too. So just take a look at the screen here and I'll just let it roll by for a second. Got it? Okay, sorry, I had a little clear my throat action there. But multiple 5s going all the way up to Japan. And it makes like a giant arrow shape pointing to the west. And then everything out in front of it, everything out to the west of it is pretty much quiet. We have to go back to the start of the week to get that activity over in Asia. So you can see where it's stuck. Now, the arrows tell us where to watch next. So do you see where the earthquake struck? You see how it's pretty much perfectly right at the balance point of both arrows, the double-sided arrows? Only have double-sided arrows pretty much one place on the planet, and that's the spot here, where if there's a big earthquake, that wave that I'm talking about spreading out from the tank, let me show you another step on this, that when the hammering action takes place, first I want you to imagine like this is just one deep earthquake here, and it's spreading out through the tank, and then another deep earthquake strikes, and then another one, and then another one, and the wave gets down to the end of the tank, and it reflects back, and it reflects back into the waves, and they start to build in amplitude, or in magnitude, if you will. I mean, earthquakes are measured in amplitude, right? So anyway, the magnitude of the wave is increased as more energy is pumped into the tank, and they become uniform. Instead of being chaotic and jostling like a swimming pool, these are more organized, and each wave takes the same size and shape of each other as the full amount of energy is distributed across the tank. So in other words, you pump a bunch of energy into the tank, and all the waves become about the same size. And the more energy you pump in, the taller and bigger the wave gets. Now, I think that's happening over thousands of miles, and we get a spread of the same size quakes going out in two directions or in multiple directions following the wave tank. So what's the wave tank? Well, you see the red lines here? The red lines are the wave tank. And the hammering action is coming up from right below here and here over to Indonesia and Philippines, or well, not Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, over to Fiji, right through here mainly. And then it spreads over to Europe. It spreads up to Japan and across over to the United States. And this wave spreads across almost equally over to both fracture zones over here in the East Pacific and goes over to the east and strikes right along the plate boundaries here in South America and Central America. So the energy is going in all directions out and away from, and also goes down to New Zealand, goes out and away in all directions, north, south, east, west, from where the hammering action is taking place. And it just takes a path of least resistance. So mainly it goes to the west first, then to the east. And to the east, you might say, well, Dutch, there's no plate boundaries there. There's nothing to the east. USGS doesn't show anything. Well, look at our earthquakes. The two arrows have been on here for the last 8 years. How can I know where the earthquake's going to keep striking over and over again? It goes back over to where our force is coming up. It spreads out across. Once it gets to here, there's an under-seamount ridge of volcanoes that makes a crescent shape and goes up into Peru. And it goes back over to the west, back up to the west-northwest, all the way past the Hawaiian island chain and connects up to Kamchatka. It basically cuts the Pacific in half. And everywhere east of this under-seamount chain are equal-spaced fracture zones, indicating that forces equally spread across this area for many, many millions of years, or well, their time frame. I'm going to sip my drink while you think about that. But east of the fracture zones, or east of the under-seamount chain, are all the fracture zones, and they aid in force going across just like a superhighway. So, taking it back over to here, 6.7 over in the Philippines on one side of the plate, and on the other side of the plate is 6.7 a day ago. So we're bouncing back and forth like a tennis match. It stands to reason we're going to see more of this in the next few days. Now the spots are determined between our current sets of earthquakes, so that actually makes it a little easier to know the areas to watch. So for instance, I see Japan sitting here totally quiet with no significant seismic activity in the past 2 days. And down to the south, a 6.7. Let's get the last 48 hours on here perfectly. There we go. So we have two 4.4s on the either side of Japan, for instance. Think of those like bookends, or even better, a two-arm scale. And in the middle, right here, between the two 4.4s, that's where this new energy is going to flow to. And it's going to be like this in the tank, where one wave fills in the previous wave's middle point. So I'm just going to park my mouse. Let me just show you. Park my mouse over the middle of a wave, and you'll see the peak of the next wave comes in and touches the middle of the valley from the previous wave. In other words, one wave fills in the other wave perfectly right in the middle point. Now look, think of that like a wave here and a wave here. The middle point is the next spot where the new wave's going to come in. So the new wave is bigger. We're dealing with upper 6. The only good news I have is this is 1,500 miles, so this should take a slight step down once it gets to Tokyo. Let me get over to the USGS map here. Another way to look at it. 4.4 on one side down here, 4.4 on the other up here. This is the new middle point, and we got a new wave coming in. So the middle point should come under stress, and it should be something significantly larger than the 4.4s on either side. So I would put it at 6.2 to 6.5. Low end 6 to mid-range 6 coming in near the Tokyo area in the next several days. Several, I mean it, so 4 to 5 days. Usually it doesn't take the whole week even for this to spread up and around the plate boundary. For this to go up and over, or another way to look at it, for this wave that's very low frequency and thousands of miles long to spread up to Japan should take a couple days. And then the middle point will get hit right where the letter H shape bend in the plate is, here by Tokyo. It's going to recombine right there. It's not going to stop there though. It's going to carry on and go all the way up to Kamchatka and over to the United States, ultimately come into the Juan de Fuca fracture zone. So we're going to get hit off this traveling wave as the end of the week. So let's just say 7 days from now, basically, as the wave is coming over and around, takes several days to get here, but it will. And let's go back to the map here. It's going to go up, over, around, and into the United States from the northwest. Now, there's already a push coming in from the previous round of activity. You see all the 4s up here now. It's like a stepping stone path of activity going up to Mount Denali. By the way, check off Mount Denali from last week. So Mount Denali now been hit twice right next to it. 4.8 last week, 4.7 this week. I was looking for 5s to come rolling in. Down by Kodiak last week. So we've got a lot going on up in Alaska, but it's all in the forward. There's our previous earthquake striking in the middle between our 2 other sets of quakes. Notice the pink earthquake is the middle point between the 2 white earthquakes. Pink earthquake struck first. Then the wave came in, struck on both sides. Goes down to the United States, and you see there's a big open area off the northwest coast of the United States going up to Vancouver Island. So now I really do have to warn you, up at Vancouver Island, Haida Gwaii, Hecate Strait. Let's zoom in on this. Check it out, guys. We have to now be on watch in the Pacific Northwest, particularly up at the Hecate Strait. Let me show you on this map here. See where the Juan de Fuca comes into the plate boundary between Vancouver and Haida Gwaii? Well, we can just trace that red line back. Look where it goes. Goes up into Alaska, back over to Kamchatka, back down to Japan, back down to the 7 that just hit, or 6.7. So energy is going to be coming up, around, over, and down, and we're already dealing with both sides of the Pacific moving within a hair, 7 degrees latitude on both sides of the plate. It stands to reason if Japan's going to get hit, the energy should be coming up, over, and down, and we should see a breakout here in the middle in between our current sets of, lack of earthquakes, lack of noteworthy quakes. Now, I could pull up the Canadian feed to further find the area, but I'm just going to put it right here, right at the mouth of the Juan de Fuca, the north side. Now, there's something else going on up here. Right here, to the east of where the Juan de Fuca begins. All of this is burning. All of this. All BC. All BC. Also Washington, Oregon, California. All burning. Enough that we've got... Well, here. Take a look at the screen. Wait a second. You can't see it. Hold on. Let me back it out. There you go. Now you might be able to see it. So you see over on the left hand and the right hand side of the screen, you see how it looks hazy? That's not haze. That is smoke from the west coast of the United States showing up here in Missouri, 1,500 miles east. And it's so smoky that it's blocking out the sun in the evening, and it looks like a scene from Star Wars on Tatooine or something, where the sun looks like an alien sun of red and purple almost. Just amazing, but those fires are accompanied by a few other things that I think we need to go take a look at this point. So before we go take a look at what I'm getting ready to show you, let's recap for all the new people here. 6.7 earthquake, let's just call it a near 7, struck over here at Philippines. Likely caused some pretty serious damage in the area, by the way. That follows the other 6.7 from a day ago on the opposite side of the plate. We're doing a tennis match thing again, going back and forth. And I say again because we've seen this happen several times in the past. At least 10 times this has happened, where we have 6.5 plus activity back to back on both sides of the plate in the same 24 to 48 hour time period. Enough that it's definitely something that happens as the plate starts to shift. And I tried to show the professionals this several years ago. They mocked and ridiculed me, told me it was chance and coincidence. You know what's funny about that? When I told them years ago, an earthquake had struck here at Kyushu. It was a 7. It broke the island in half. Huge fissure crack formed across Kyushu in South Japan. The next day, a same-sized quake struck over here at Ecuador. And I made a post on that. When that happened, a professor from the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the director of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the people who run all the stuff up here, he weighed in on my post, and he publicly disparaged me and said there was no relation between the earthquakes that happened back to back, and it was just chance. Well, guess what? It happened again that next day. So first Kyushu and Ecuador got hit with 7s back to back, 24 hours apart. Then a new 7 struck here, right here at the Solomon Islands, going to Vanuatu, and then the next day, a 6.5 to 6.9 struck off the coast of Mexico. So it was 4 quakes. First Kyushu, then Ecuador, 7 to 7, then another 7 over here at Solomon Islands, then another near 7, or right at 7, on the coast of Mexico. And the professor shut up after that. Didn't ever acknowledge that he was screwed up or messed up or tried to deny it. But again, this professor guy who ran the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network really just had it out for me because he got some other problem. But trying to deny things is kind of like a problem for the professionals. But we're not in here to hear what they have to say, and you're not tuned in to hear them. You're trying to find out what's getting ready to happen next. And by the way, if you want to know what's going to happen next, you can identify the areas yourself, the halfway points between the current sets of quakes. There's several halfway points. If you look at 48 hours, there are several halfway points between the current sets of quakes. Every one of them is going to get hit by a larger earthquake than what's on both sides of. So, like, when you look at something like this, it just looks like a jumbled mess, because it is, but you've got 2 6s and a 5.2. Or wait, 2 6s and 2 5.2s. Let's see if there's any others, 5 and less. You could add in the other 5 down south. Do you see where all the rings overlap? The white ring and all 3 sets of pink rings? They all overlap right here, almost like some kind of target or something. And let's go over and show you on the USGS map. Do you see they don't have anything there right on this? Well, it's an S-shaped bend in the plate. You can even see it visually with bathymetric measurements, undersea measurements, over here on Google Earth. But the USGS doesn't have anything there. What a joke! It's a giant S-shaped bend in the plate, and it's where all the rings overlap. So I would also say, not only is Japan going to be getting a 6.5-ish earthquake, but we will also be getting almost the exact same size quake where all these rings overlap. Remember, we have a 2-sided arrow here. One's going to go up to the north, the other's going to go down to the south. It's like a river at a fork in a river. It's going to try and spread both ways. Path of least resistance, of course, is going to be going up to Japan. But the backflow, that wave reflecting back in the tank, one more time, we go back over to the tank video, and the wave gets down to the end of the tank here towards us, right here, and it reflects back in. Let's go look and see when that first happens. Watch this. First wave comes down the tank, and then it reflects off the end, and it starts to go in. You'll be able to see it here in about 2 seconds. There we go. Wave starts to reflect back in, and it immediately is pumping the full power of the wave back into the other waves, and it goes down towards the other end, and it reflects off and comes back. Now the other end is pushing, and the other end is pushing multiple times. So not only do you have the wave reflecting back in, but you have multiple new pushes coming in at the same time. That increases the amplitude. So I, again, stand by it. And again, I've already published the method how to repeat it. The forecasting method, watching where the rings overlap or watching the halfway points between our sets of quakes. Now you could further reduce this down to halfway points between each set of quakes. So a halfway point between the new 6.7 and this 5.2, I'll mark in blue right, well, if I can click on it, right here. So halfway point between those two is South Philippines. Halfway point between the two 5.2s here in Indonesia is right where the letter D is. The other halfway point between the two 5s is where the other letter D is, and the other halfway point between the 6 and the 5s overlaps right here at the edge of Papua New Guinea. All 4 of those areas are going to get hit too. So we're going to get 2 shallower or 2 larger quakes, Japan and down where all these rings overlap right here in Indonesia, but then the halfway points between each of these will also be filled in by larger earthquakes than what is on both sides. So if we're dealing with a 5.2 and a 5.2, something larger than a 5.2 will be striking in between those two. Same with these, same with these. It's going to be busy. It's going to be busy. And I'm going to be back on in the next several days, most likely, talking about additional near 7.0 quakes, or maybe even bigger, that are coming over towards the United States and heading out over towards Europe. So hang on to your hats, guys. Things are about to go through the roof again. Solar is the main player as to why all this is happening, by the way. So if you guys don't check the solar, you probably should pay attention to it and see what's coming our way. Once the solar arrives, within a couple days of the solar arriving, the charged particles, the electrical energy goes down to ground. All of a sudden, we start seeing a bunch of deep earthquakes. And then the deep earthquakes are immediately, shortly, it doesn't even take a long time, followed by shallower, larger earthquakes within 7 to 10 days of the deep quakes. Geologically speaking, 7 to 10 days is nothing. Professionals used to tell us it took hundreds or thousands of years for these things to happen and shift, right? Like an earthquake at New Madrid's going to build for 100 years. All right. Now, speaking of earthquakes on the New Madrid, I haven't even touched about the United States yet, but look at the cluster of 3s going on across the United States and a 4 out off the West Coast. This brings me into something I've got to show you, but we're not going to really talk about too much. The hotspots and the fires. The hotspots, fires, earthquakes, and volcanoes. They're all connected. So the fires out on the West Coast are tied into geophysics, tied into the plate shifting. And the more the plate shifts, the more fires break out. If it's fire season, you're really going to be looking at a lot of fires and a lot of huge activity. So what do we have to see today? Well, our hotspots from the previous day are marked in orange. Then you see the current hotspots marked in red. The weather satellite is picking these up. Oh, wait, you don't see this. The weather satellite is picking these up. These hotspots are somewhere between the ground and up in space. The weather satellite filters them out because it's designed to see real fires. So, for instance, a real fire up here at the Lake Tahoe area. Another real fire up here right in Northern California. Another set of real fires up here in Oregon and so forth, okay? So the weather satellite picks up the fires and it's filtering out the anomalies. Now look where we have an anomaly. We cannot ignore this. We've got some kind of a hotspot signature showing up next to the Ubehebe craters and the Ryan craters complex. And they're going right across the border. Here's Pahrump, across the whole town of Pahrump. We know all of Pahrump is not burning right now, and so what's causing these hotspots? Electromagnetic disturbance. A seismic release. A seismic buildup and release. Electromagnetically speaking now. Now there's a change. Yesterday, we were over across this whole area, down across the Mojave, down across Southern California, all focused in down on the San Andreas and southwest Arizona. It's shifted. This is bouncing around. It's going from Salton Sea all the way up to the California-Nevada border east of Ridgecrest. That's a huge jump for a day to have thousands of hotspots down here yesterday and now to have them up here jumping 200 miles in a day. So it's proof that this is shifting. These hotspots are shifting. And the hotspots matter. It's a new discovery of mine in the past few years that these heat signatures are showing up at the same time the plate is starting to shift. And it just so happens they match where the edge of the craton is, the purple part, going over to the rusty brownish part, the deformed craton. Going out to the west-northwest, we get fires breaking out and accompany these hotspots. We also see the hotspots go next to volcanoes, and we also see the fires and hotspots be accompanied with earthquakes all the way around the area that's seeing the activity. So the earthquakes, the fires, the hotspots, the volcanoes. I'm gonna sneeze here. Hold on. Oh no, it was a cough, not a sneeze. And no, I don't have COVID. So back over to it. If you're just now tuning in, huge earthquake struck over here in the West Pacific just in the past hour, 6.7 to 7.0. And that's the exact same size that struck over in the East Pacific a day ago down in Panama, 6.7 to 7.0. Both sides of the plate moving on a near 7 basis. We're not done yet. It's going to go up to Japan, go over to the United States. It's also going to be going over to the West, which I haven't even talked about. I'll have to get a new forecast out in the next few days, but kind of briefly touched on it here, going down to the west by southwest, down to Indonesia, certainly touched on it in Japan and the United States. It's going through the roof. We have a warning going in the East Caribbean for 6.0 range activity after the 7 struck over here at Panama, and that has not struck yet, but just get ready for that over in the Caribbean. And South America I didn't talk about in this update much, but just a spread of 4s going down across to our letter X's, 5s striking down to the east-southeast. This means Chile's going to get hit. Chile is also going to have a warning issued for them, and that should also be in the 6.7 to 7.0 range. So really, I think we're looking at a 6.5 in Japan, a near 7 off the coast of Vancouver Island in the United States, and then down here to the southeast Pacific, down in Chile. That's 3. Where am I missing one? Oh, 4. 4 would also be here, 6-ish, 6.5-ish, something bigger, or something at least noteworthy striking where the rings overlap. That would be 4 significant earthquakes due this week. Now, again, I hope I'm wrong. If it looks like it's going to die down or starts to spread out and fade out and drop off smaller quakes across a bigger distance, I mean, that's what we want. Instead of 4 big quakes, I'd rather see 100 5s spread out across the plates going from point to point. Maybe not 100. 100's an exaggeration. I'd rather see 20 or 30 or 40 5s in the course of several days strike across a huge area going from point to point as opposed to a single large earthquake and then a trail of them going out and away. I mean, if you have your choice, you choose the smaller, of course, but look, we're already dealing with 2 of them, and that would be ignorant to ignore what's going on right now, especially in the United States and Canada. I mean, would you ignore a 7 that could be coming in off the coast or right along the coast of Vancouver this week when the rest of the plate is already doing it? I mean, if it doesn't come there, that'll be weird. It would be weird if the shift doesn't make it to the Pacific Northwest United States. That would be odd. We would expect it to. If it doesn't, then the plate's, there's something wrong. It's blocked or locked or stuck somewhere and will be just taking a little bit to get to us. All right, time for me to save this. We're going to save it and put it out over on YouTube again. We'll premiere it back. You have to be subscribed to me for 2 years to chat in the chat room, but that's just to prevent trolls. Oh man, if you knew my story. All right, 4:41, I'll be back. If anything else goes down, peace out. Word up. Much love. Oh, let me remind everybody. This part's important. Please listen. Please. A lot of people are worried about earthquakes just in general. I would like to remind you, don't be scared about earthquakes. Be prepared so you can watch the energy now spread and come your way. I mean, come on, we're getting 6.7s on both sides of the plate. It's kind of predictable at this point, to use a USGS word. Forecastable is the word I would use. That we can watch for it to happen. And then you can watch for it to come your way. It's flowing like a river almost. So you can have several days warning that something's getting ready to build into your region. Usually, 9.5 times out of 10, I mean, again, a solar storm can come in, an immediate big solar blast, and we can see that can throw a wrench into the works. But on the normal schedule, we're talking a few days that you normally can see a buildup taking place. That should take away some of the fear. It's not going to take away the actual adrenaline rush or whatever happens when an earthquake hits. I've never felt an earthquake of any kind. Knock on wood. Never felt an earthquake of any kind. But I would imagine, that your adrenaline kicks in, and it could still be an intimidating experience, like going through a tornado. But you don't live your life in fear of tornadoes. You can watch and see when a storm is coming your way, right? So you would do the same with earthquakes at this point. You'd watch and see, okay, there's bigger earthquakes happening this week. The sun just went through a little solar storm. Okay, that makes sense. Now I live along the river, the seismic river, so I need to watch for a little bit of flooding. And if there's a big solar storm, massive X-class flares that start to kick up deep earthquakes, hundreds of deep earthquakes, then we know to watch for extreme earthquake activity. Right now, we're at large. We're not at extreme. Knock on wood on that, too, because solar storms, we have to trust that they're reporting them to us proper. Trust. Trust in science. It's a sad state of affairs. All right, I've gone on now for 3 additional minutes. You guys need to have an earthquake plan, too. The plan is going to be basic, taking shelter underneath a table or a desk. Now, the emergency kit is something you should already have most of the stuff in your house. Band-Aids, first aid, change of clothes, set of shoes. Those basic things, seasonal specific. Food and water, you can probably in the backpack or in the bag in the emergency kit. You just need a couple days at the most. And for the long-term stuff, of course, you'll have weeks, months, or years worth of food, probably, hopefully, if this past year has taught you anything about having to go to the store or not go to the store. But anyway, have your emergency kit somewhere easily placed out or at least accessible. Don't put it at the top of a shelf in the back of a closet. Have it so you can grab it. And of course, you'll end up using it for any kind of severe weather, also earthquakes, and maybe even people have to evacuate for fires. Can I give you a couple other ideas? Extra set of keys, extra IDs, extra paperwork, the important stuff that you have to have for your life to work. Extra debit card. Put that into the emergency kit too. And scan some of your documents, put it onto a waterproof flash drive so you don't have to carry around a bunch of paperwork. So scan what you can, put that onto the waterproof flash drive, and you've now freed up your backpack to have more stuff in it. Okay? Just giving you some ideas, but those are some good ones, right? The extra set of keys, let me just tell you a story. The extra set of keys has already come in handy for me multiple times because I'm such a doofus when it comes to losing my car keys or putting them around the house. Wife always finds them for me. Always. I always set them down somewhere else. I'm supposed to put them on the front table? Nope. No. They're going to be on top of a shelf somewhere as I take them out of my pocket to set them down. So, extra set of keys. It'll save your life, man. All right. Or it'll save your marriage. All right. Okay. Much love, everyone. I'll be back. Peace out.